We are so close, but before you can do this, Tony Roach must do this.
Now that is a sign of good things to come.
Today, we help you get ready for first ice and your first winter trip.
Hey, I'm Tony Roach, professional guide, Rapala Pro staffer. I couldn't be more excited to introduce our brand new show, Dialed In Angling. Wow, what a day. The sun is shining, there's virtually no wind. Yes, it's late November, it's definitely frost on the ground. They've already pulled the docks out of the lake. We're starting to see ice form, but guess what? I'm going fishing today. I could not be more excited. This show is a weekly adventure where we bring you up-to-date ice fishing information, ice reports from across the ice belt. We've got some of the best contributors and the hottest sticks on ice, bringing you up-to-date information and keeping you dialed in. And fishing with me today is my good buddy, co-angler, Rapala Pro staffer. This guy is a stick, let me tell you, he's a good buddy of mine, Nick Sakella.
Super excited to get on the water this morning. It's kind of a bittersweet morning, probably the last time we're gonna launch a boat for the season. It's starting to get cold, like Tony was saying, but getting that ice fishing itch, so.
It's bittersweet, but I can't wait to get after it.
Yeah, let's go get this boat in the water.
Fishing is the very fabric of who I am. You know, I grew up on a lake river system. I just spent countless hours fishing, thinking about fishing. When I was in high school, I started fishing tournaments at a very young age. That progressed into a guiding gig. I landed up at Lake of the Woods, fished Canada and the US side. I came back, I knew what I wanted to do for a living and what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and that's fishing. That's what I'm doing right now. I've been doing it for over 20 years full-time, on the water, on the ice. I can't get enough of patterning fish in different situations. Doesn't matter where I'm at on the planet, I'm always thinking about fishing. You know, I've been a Rapala Pro staffer for almost 20 years now. It's great to work with a brand like Rapala, where regardless of species you're chasing, Rapala has baits for that specific technique for that species, and very fortunate to be able to do what I love and do it on a daily basis. I wake up in the morning, pinch myself every day. I get to live out a childhood dream. I suppose you're wondering, for an ice fishing show, why are we out on open water? That is a great question, because I spend a lot of time scouting late fall for where I'm going to fish in the winter. So on a lake like this, where you've got a lot of different wintering basins, these panfish will pull out of the shallows as soon as the vegetation dies. When that water cools, the bait fish and those panfish kind of use the edges of those basins. And guess what? Where they're at right now, you're gonna find them as soon as this lake's capped over in a few short weeks.
Yeah, it's super fun coming out here in this late fall, chasing these deep wintering crappies and getting them ready for winter. Tony knows all these little lakes, it's just a riot.
This is a massive school of fish. They are all over underneath the boat, man. Bad? You know, once I've located the fish, then it's just a matter of catching a few. You know, I want to see the size structure. You know, we know they're very dense in these locations, but I like to use sort of a heavier method of getting down there quickly. I'm using a jigging wrap. This is a number 5 jigging wrap. I used to use number 3s as well. You can use jigging spoons. You know, there's a lot of real ice fishing techniques that you can use this time of year to be successful. But first and foremost, I want to use something that I can get down there quickly, catch a few fish, and not have to worry about baiting up and messing with that sort of thing. Well, this is promising. We're literally catching them on every drop. When we come back, we're gonna wrap up how I mark icons on this small lake to get these panfish dialed in, and then we're gonna show you how we scout walleyes on the big pond.
Dialed In Angling, brought to you by StrikeMaster, VMC Hooks, Rapala, and Suffix.
Hey, I'm Tony Roach with Dialed In Angling. I'm fishing with my good buddy Nick Sakella. We're doing a little fall scouting for panfish. We're fishing the basins. We're looking for locations in which these fish are at right now, late fall, but we're looking for locations that we can come back when this thing's capped over on ice and catch panfish like this. It's amazing the schools that we're finding right now, just the sheer numbers in these basins. It's so much easier to scout in the fall. That way, when you come back with your ice auger, you can land on those fish and be dialed in. Oh, look at this school though. Let's go hit them up, huh? What I love about fishing jig wraps is just the fact how fast it can get down there. And then boom, you're right on top of them.
See them so well too.
Oh, and you just feel the line go slack. You know, when we're fishing these crappies, I like to use a braid with like a fluorocarbon leader. You know, I use a Suffix 832 braid, that fluorocarbon leader, look at that thing, just inhale that jig wrap. And most of the time you don't feel the bite like you would like a tug. It's basically your line goes slack. You've got that heavy jig wrap down there, the line goes slack, you know you've got a crappie on. So there's a few different ways you can go about marking your spot so it'll transfer to your winter units. You know, if you're using the same brand unit from open water to ice, you can just simply pop in a micro SD card and then transfer that from your boat, you know, to your ice unit. Some people will actually pop their unit off of their boat and use it for ice, for example. Or like me, like I'll bring a winter unit with me this time of year. That way I can just simply hit the waypoint button. It's gonna save my exact location on my winter unit. So when I'm back here in a few weeks, I pop my winter unit on, boom, I've got those icons recorded and it'll show me exactly where we're fishing today. The last thing you can do is something simple. If you don't have a GPS, there's a lot of mapping apps that you can have on your phone. Almost all of them record a waypoint or a pin of sorts. You can just punch that pin and then it'll simply bring you back to that spot. That's a simple, easy, cost-effective way to keep track of your icons. Another thing you want to think about when laying down icons, because I put down thousands of icons a year, figure out an icon that you can use for structure, that you can use for walleyes, that you can use for pike, that you can use for panfish. That's gonna help jog your memory when you come back to those areas to know exactly what you're targeting. And we came out to this lake. I feel very comfortable. We found the fish pretty quickly. The crappies are gonna be in these basins. In a couple short weeks, they're gonna be in those same spots. When I come out here with my ice auger, I'm gonna be dialed in. We're gonna do the same on Mille Lacs. We're gonna load up the boat right now, head over to Mille Lacs Lake, look for some walleyes, scout for some walleyes. But before we do that, you're gonna wanna check out Travis Frank and today's ice bite. A
few years ago, StrikeMaster decided to kick their gas augers to the side, mainly because people didn't want to use gas, oil, and have loud engines out on the ice, but also because these lithium battery-powered augers have proven to be up to the task, drilling through ice all winter long. So then the question became, which auger do I choose? This 40-volt auger or the 24V? Now, the decision really comes down to your own personal needs. Are you the kind of angler that jumps around out on the ice drilling a lot of holes and hole hops? Or do you hunker down in a shack and drill just a handful of holes and wait for the fish to come to you? That's really what this comes down to. The 40V is the workhorse. Now, StrikeMaster has put it through the test and it is proven to drill up to 100 holes through 16 inches of ice with this 8-inch laser bit on a single battery charge. That's a lot of holes. It also handles the 10-inch bit and a chipper blade too. Now the 24V, this auger right here will drill through 50 holes on a single charge in 16 inches of ice using an 8-inch blade. Obviously, if you have a smaller blade, like a 6-inch, you can drill through more holes, and if there's less ice, you'll be able to drill through more holes yet. The reason this auger excels over the 40V is that there's less weight, less wear and tear. If you're gonna haul your gear out or you've got a lot of snow and slush, you don't have the extra weight to carry around. Now, the last thing I'll say about either one of these augers is that if you decide that you want to purchase an extra battery, you obviously can double what you can expect to drill in a given day. These batteries are built to last for years. You can charge them again and again and again. Either the 40-volt or the 24-volt lithium battery-powered ice auger by StrikeMaster is a great purchase. It is proven to outcut any other auger on the ice today. You just have to decide which one is right for you.
Dialed In Angling, brought to you by StrikeMaster, VMC Hooks, Rapala, and Suffix. Hey there, Bill Shirk with today's Dialed In Angling Ice Report. Each week we will give you up-to-date ice and fishing reports from the Rapala and StrikeMaster pro staffers all over the upper Midwest. And today we're starting up on Red Lake and Lake of the Woods with Brian Beef Sather. Brian, you sent a video. Oh my gosh, what was that?
It's ice fishing. 2023 hardwater season is here. I love it. I can't wait. We were out on Red Lake, upper Red Lake there, and found 4 to 6 inches of ice, and the fish are hitting.
I'm guessing everyone wants to be on Red Lake first, and right behind is Lake of the Woods. What do you see up there?
The rivers and all the bays are starting to freeze up well. We have ice now on the big pond that we call it out here. And it's as far as the eye can see, but we're waiting for a good satellite to see what's way out there.
We will check back in with you next week, expecting a good fishing report from you. Thanks, Beef. Next, we head west to South Dakota. Marcus Quam is out in the Webster area. Marcus, everyone wants to find ice. Do you guys have it?
We don't have a lot of it. We got some ice, but not in the perfect form yet.
I see open water behind you.
Yeah, so I'm on one of the bigger lakes right now. I'm out on Bitter. I'm just doing a loop, checking a bunch of stuff this morning, and small stuff's locked up. Medium-sized stuff is locked up to a point with a bunch of open pockets, and then obviously all the big stuff's all open right now.
Back in Minnesota, it's time to check in both the Brainerd Lakes and Mille Lacs Lake areas. Joining us, Nick Sakala. Nick, you look cold out there.
Ooh, Bill, it's a chilly morning here. We had 9 degrees when I was driving around this morning, but the wind's blowing. It's cold, but we're making ice eventually.
Yeah, I don't like seeing the open water.
Yeah, you know, a lot of our bigger lakes, Bill, still haven't capped over in the area. A lot of the small lakes that guys are going to be walking out on, you know, first for panfish and stuff are all capped over 1 to 2 inches on them, but the bigger lakes are still wide open.
Yeah, that seems to be the report everywhere. We will check back in with you once we've got ice Pray for some cold weather, but don't worry, the ice is coming.
Hey, I'm Tony Roach. Along with me is Nick Sakella. We are an absolute race against winter. We're breaking ice in these locations to do some fall scouting for winter. And so this is probably our last trip on the water. Things are freezing up, things are happening quickly as we move towards winter. We were on a small lake earlier chasing basin crappies and panfish, figuring out their locations, where they're at on these small lakes. Now we're on Mille Lacs Lake, we're shifting gears, we're going towards walleyes, another species that I love chasing all winter long. Let's get out and see if we can find some of these locations. These fish are gonna be in these locations as soon as this baby's capped over. We're only a few short weeks away, and this is gonna give us a leg up so that we're dialed in when we get out here this winter. You know, I'm fishing a neon moon eye jig. It's a VMC. This is a 1/4 ounce with a shiner minnow. You know, when the water's really cold like this, you know, I'm simply just pitching out to fish, and we're just kind of drifting along these break lines. I'm using the forward-facing sonar. I'm looking for numbers of fish along these break lines. You know, one thing about Mille Lacs is there's giant sets of structure. So I do a lot of scanning and looking, and what's nice about fall scouting for winter, I can get a really good idea of what's along this break line by simply doing one pass here. I want to pick up a couple fish and then move on to the next. The cool part is if you're finding them in the sand, for example, you're going to find them in the sand on a lot of other locations around the lake. If you're finding walleyes in the rocks, or if you're finding them in the weeds, I want to know what kind of the status of the vegetation is for early ice. So all these things are going to be helpful clues. When I get out here and I start drilling holes, I'm going to know exactly where I'm going to start fishing. There we go. Now that did not take long. We've been catching fish all fall long, you know, jig fishing, jigs and plastics. But as this surface temp starts to drop in the 40s, you want to know that the bait fish are still here and that the walleyes are here. Well, we've found a ton of fish along the shoreline breaks. I've got a lot of great starting points. But when we come back, we're going to do some more scouting on some of the mid-lake humps, gravel bars, mud flats, etc., and get you dialed in.
Dialed In Angling, brought to you by StrikeMaster, VMC Hooks, Rapala, and Suffix.
Hey, welcome back. You know, we wouldn't be on a scouting mission on a lake that's 132,000 acres if we weren't checking some of this deeper structure. We've pulled up to a spot here. Seems like there's plenty of fish along the break line. Let's get after it. Now that is a sign of good things to come. I always look at fall as like a really good barometer and a good insight into how fishing's gonna be in the winter, whether it's Mille Lacs Lake or whatever. But walleyes, I mean, if they're snapping in the fall, they're gonna be biting in the winter. I've been all over these big water destinations this fall, spending countless hours not only marking fish, but marking structure, whether it's weeds, whether it's rock, whether it's sand, and laying down those spots. And I don't care if it's Mille Lacs Lake or a small lake, it could be Leech Lake, doesn't matter. I mean, if those fish are there now, they're gonna be there in a few weeks. Look at that, just inhaled that minnow. Unreal. Not a bad fish. Good average size. Mille Lacs is one of those destinations though that they bite all day long, so it's a fun early ice walleye bite is fun all winter long. Beauty. Get this one back in. This is a really good sign. In addition to finding fish along these areas, you know, let's say you're along shallow water, not just Mille Lacs Lake, but anywhere, I also want to look at what kind of vegetation's still standing. You know, some lakes, right after turnover, you know, the vegetation dies hard. A lake like Mille Lacs or Leech or Winnie, where you get a lot of wind, it tends to kind of erode that dead vegetation, so it'll fall over quickly. So as I'm not only looking for fish, I'm also looking for vegetation in these lakes. What's the status of the vegetation? Because that's gonna hold a lot of fish, especially on stocked fisheries where you've got a lot of walleyes that kind of relate to those weed lines. Okay, so they're biting shallow. They're biting kind of on those secondary breaks. We've got a bunch of marked, and now we've got them marked out deep. This bodes well for a good winter bite, man. The more scouting you can do, the more informed you are, the more you're gonna be dialed in. I'm having a blast today. This has been an absolute gas. Covering a couple different lakes that we love fishing, covering different depths, different structures, and just locating a lot of fish before this ice comes. What a great way to finish up a open water season and get into a brand new ice season. Hey, next week will be our first week on the ice. You're gonna wanna tune in all season long because we're gonna have lots of ice fishing information from some of the hottest anglers in the country to keep you dialed in.